Spyderco versus Benchmade. There is some pretty stiff competition right here. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. Today we're talking about knives once again. Previously, when I left off with a knife video, we were talking about this right here, the Travax Trek. It's a fixed blade field knife, and I ended up carrying this thing for 30 days straight as my primary knife, and that was all I allowed myself to use during those days. If you want to check out the video of that, I'll leave a link for it right up here, because right now there's going to be a spoiler alert for that. At the end of those 30 days, I realized that carrying a fixed blade is just not for me in my everyday life. I need something smaller. Of course, I was going back to a folder. So literally right when I turned off my camera, I went to my box of knives and I was like, what am I going to carry next? What could I test that's a little bit different from my norm? Now, before I started carrying this for 30 days, you guys may have known from my last EDC update video that I was stuck on this once again. This is the Spyderco Para 3. I've also done a video on this knife. It's one of my favorites in the collection. It's just very easy to go back to a knife like this because I just like a lot of different things about it. So instead of carrying the Para 3 again, right next to it in the box was this knife here. This is an old, tried and true for me. This is actually one of my easily recommended knives. I also included this knife in the knife banter video that I did with Blade HQ, and I was talking about my top 5 EDC knives that kind of range all across the spectrum with different locking mechanisms, different materials, different price points. And this is one that's coming in relatively inexpensive, very easy to recommend. It's, again, one of my favorite knives, the Spyderco Delica. So I started carrying the Delica 4 for about a week or two, and then it kind of hit me, why didn't I just combine these two knives right here? I knew there was a knife out on the market, and for some reason I just never ended up buying it because it's very similar to this right here, the Para 3. I decided to fill that last slot in my knife box with sort of a combination of these two here, and that of course leads us to the Spyderco Para 3 Lightweight. So this was that mystery knife that I was sort of hinting at. I kind of knew that I wanted it, but I never ended up buying one until after that video. And now that I've been carrying it for a little while, I've been using it pretty much every single day. I do have some thoughts on it, which brings us to this video here. Lightweight, pocketable EDC knives. Now, this concept of lightweight knives sort of got me thinking, instead of just reiterating all of my thoughts on the Para 3 and just talking about how this one is pretty much just more lightweight, I would throw some other ones into the mix. Here's another super popular knife with a lot of people out there in this same category, the Benchmade Bugout. There's a lot of different things to talk about here, so let's head back to the workbench and we'll get a top-down look at some other comparable options. Alright, so let's kick off this comparison starting with the Spyderco Delica 4. This is going to be one of the cheaper options, coming in at about $84 as of right now. Here I have the gray version, and these are FRN handles. This has the Spyderco Volcano style texture. They're like little triangle wedges with dots in them. Some people love this, some people hate it, and that's sort of why I'm going over the handle materials with these knives. The pocket clip on this is really standard for a Spyderco. I don't mind them. As you can see, this one has some pretty good wear on it. I do wish that they came with a deep option. However, that's something that you would have to add after the fact of you buying this knife. Centering on here still looks good. This is a lock back knife. Of course, the Spidey hole right here. You can deploy the knife fairly easily. Might take a little bit of getting used to. It's not going to be as easy to flick out. This one is pretty stiff, but if you loosen that pivot up, then you should be able to do that. This is a VG10 blade, full flat grind. Excuse all the dirt on this blade. I do actually use my knives and I don't maintain them probably as much as I should. But again, overall, this is a knife that I can really easily recommend. It's got good jimping, it feels good in my hand, it's almost the perfect size. It's not too big, not too small, and for everyday carry tasks, this is a very good option for anyone who might be interested in getting into carrying a pocket knife, but this one isn't going to break the bank, obviously. So I'll actually leave that one open here so you guys can look at that for a little while. Now this obviously isn't the lightweight version, but we do of course have to talk about the Para 3. This is still one of my favorite knives, most recommended. Flat ground blade, this is all black everything. KC Lynch clip on here. And this blade uses a little bit better steel than the Delica with an S30V blade on there. I did put a wicked edge on this a while ago. You can sort of see it shine in there. But this one has been used and abused, and I could probably tune this one up a little bit. That's besides the point. This one is just a segue into the Para 3 lightweight. Now this is something that a lot of people you either like or you don't like. You're really worried about how much weight you are carrying around with you every day in your pockets and outside your pockets, on your waistband and things like that. Weight never really bothered me. I have carried a lot of really big chunky knives, and I still do from time to time, but once I started carrying the Delica, I really started to get a better appreciation for lightweight knives. I love the Para 3, which led me to this Para 3 lightweight. This is of course the satin blade version. Blade HQ just recently released a all black version similar to this Para 3 right here, but in the lightweight, so kind of bummed that I missed out on that. However, I actually am a fan of this combo right here. It reminds me of my Paramilitary 2, which is another one of my favorite knives. If you haven't picked up on it by now, I love Spyderco blades for a lot of different reasons, but mainly that full flat grind, the blade shape, and of course the Spidey hole, because they're so fun to fidget with, easy to deploy and put away. You can do it one-handed once you get used to the compression lock, which this one has. And yeah, I'm just a big fan of these. So the Para 3 lightweight is coming in a little bit cheaper than the Para 3 with the G10 handles. These are FRN handles. And because the materials are a little bit cheaper on this knife, it comes in at about $98 as I'm filming this video right now. So you're getting a sub $100 knife right here, and when it comes to knives under $100, this one takes the cake as being my favorite as of right now. So again, FRN handles, you got the same volcano style texture that you have on the Delica. This one might be a little less aggressive. It seems like it's not quite as deep, but no complaints there at all. The contours around here where you are actually gripping the knife, they're kind of smoothed out and rolled over. You got a lanyard hole back here, which I don't really care about. I don't use those on any of my knives. And then you have a wire pocket clip. This is another thing that it seems like people either love or hate, and I think I'm on the love side. It's just a super simple clip. I like the retention on it, and one thing that I find is that this doesn't chew up my pockets as much as some others, like this right here. The tension on this is a little bit stiffer, although this is an older knife, and I think the Delica and clips like this chew up my pants pockets a little bit more than clips like this do. Now I know there's a lot of people who don't like wire pocket clips, and I understand why. However, works for me, and it keeps this thing really lightweight. Other than that, you have the full flat ground CTS BD1N steel blade. Can you put any more letters and numbers in those naming conventions? The steel for me has been fine so far. I haven't had to touch up this edge or anything like that. I probably will put a wicked edge on here once I clean all the gunk off of there. But yeah, the blade has been good for me so far. Again, on the back you have a compression lock, which once you get used to it, you can close one-handed pretty easily. And then of course you have the Spidey hole to flick that blade out, and I'm a big fan of all of that stuff, as I keep saying. The jimping on this is great. The centering on here is also spot on, so another really good option coming in under $100. Now we're moving on to the two that everyone seems to love to hate lately. We're not talking politics here on the channel because I never do, but of course we're talking about Benchmade. First, we'll start with the Bugout, I guess. So this one in particular sort of made a pretty big buzz when it hit the market. It's one of the first ultra lightweight knives coming from Benchmade. Axis lock, really nice style blade on here, although mine's a little marred up. This thing is ultra thin, ultra lightweight. They're using pretty good steel on the blade here, and a lot of people were buzzing about this. A lot of people wanted to know my opinion on the Bugout. I wasn't really interested in this knife until Blade HQ came out with this version right here. This was an exclusive. I don't think they're available anymore, but this is the all black version of the Benchmade Bugout. So what's the deal with this knife? First of all, the handle materials. Keeping this thing lightweight, They're using Grivery, however you want to say it.
Grivery.
It's a plasticky material. Sounds like this. Not my favorite material. If I had to choose between the plasticky materials, I'm gonna go with the FRN on the Spydercos over here. There were some early reviews of this knife where everyone was like, oh yes, this is the ultimate everyday carry knife. It's ultra lightweight, it's a good size, everything that you need and nothing that you don't need. But then after a little while, people started complaining more and more about these handle scales. They said that they flex. And as you can see, I'm not using a whole lot of force here, but yeah, of course, it's plastic. It's going to flex like that. People were saying that under hard use, they feel like they would break this thing. The lockup, I mean, it's not the tightest lockup in the world. If I compare that to like the compression lock here, this definitely feels a little bit more solid to me. But again, as a pocket knife, something that's small and ultra lightweight that you're carrying in your pocket every day, this would be okay in my opinion. You have an S30V blade on here, which is very similar to this Para 3 right here. Great blade steel, no issues with that. You got the axis lock, which is also fun to fidget with if you get used to it. Small little thumb stud there, and this entire thing is the lightest knife out of all of the ones that we're looking at today. There's a little bit of a lanyard hole on the back here, and you'll also notice 3 different holes here, so you can flip the pocket clip to the other side. This is a tiny pocket clip, but it gets the job done. You don't really need it to come down the full length of the knife, and retention on it is really nice. Deep carry as well, so this thing completely disappears in your pocket, both the way it rides really deep, but also how thin it is. A little bit of jimping on the back here, and yeah, that's one of the offerings from Benchmade. Now the main thing that turned me off about this knife is the price point. For what it is, you get the Grivery handles, plastic handles and everything. I feel like this should absolutely be a sub $100 knife, much like these over here. I understand that they're using great materials and the axis lock and everything is very sought after. It's a good blade, I just don't think it is $136 good. That is one of the reasons why I never really got around to reviewing this knife, so here are my thoughts now. But if you're okay with that price tag, then this is a pretty good knife. You can see the centering on there is rock solid. I did actually struggle with that a little bit, and I found that if you sort of wiggle the blade around a little bit, you can actually get this thing to sort of nestle in there a little bit better, and since I got this thing centered, it has not moved since. So again, if you're okay with paying a premium for a blade like that, you get good blade steel, then that's another option out there. However, I'm still opting for these. And now for the final option, the one that came out after the Bugout and actually before the Blade HQ version of this, the Benchmade Bailout. This one, as you can tell, looks pretty similar to the Bugout, except it's a little bit longer. You can tell there's something going on with the blade there, and you have a pommel on the end as opposed to this little lanyard thing right here. So what drew me to this knife was, of course, it's ultra lightweight, and we will get into the weights here in a second. But the main thing was actually the blade shape. At the time, I was carrying around my Chris Reeve Sebenza. Speaking of that, here we go. Just for comparison, this is a heavy knife, and this really doesn't fit in here, but I was carrying this knife around when this one was released, so that is why I opted to test this one out, because it is a Tanto blade. So as you can see, compared to the Sebenza 21, very similar in length, blade shape and everything. When it comes to the thickness, of course, the Bailout is much slimmer, much more lightweight, but yeah, it's a pretty cool comparison there. So much like the Bugout, this one of course does come with the same Grivery style handles here. Again, not my favorite, but it's not gonna stop me from carrying the knife. Actually, out of all of these here, this one has seen the least amount of pocket time. I don't really know why, I don't really have a reason for that, but as you can see, this blade is pretty pristine as of right now. This is a 3V blade, so it's going to be a little bit harder than the blade steel on the Bugout over here. And this thing, when they released it, they were sort of directing it towards like military and law enforcement type of people. This knife is actually a part of their black line, so I found that kind of interesting that they are marketing a ultra lightweight knife with these materials as sort of like a first responder or military personnel style knife. I guess it makes sense for the form factor. I mean, they're using a really hard steel, which is going to be a little bit more prone to chipping, but it's going to hopefully hold an edge for a long time. The handle on here, you can get a full-handed grip even if you're wearing gloves. This is sort of deceptive actually. It's a slender knife in this direction and this direction, but when it comes to the actual length of this thing, when it's folded up, this thing ends up being quite a bit longer than the Bugout. So if you think you like something like the Bugout but you have big hands and you want something with a little more purchase real estate on here, then yeah, this would be a better option for you. Again, axis lock, thumb studs on each side. This is sort of like a sandblasted finish on the blade here. I'm not exactly sure how well that would hold up because, like I said, haven't used this thing a whole lot, but it is a really cool blade. Same style pocket clip on the Bugout. And now for the price again. Again, you're getting a little bit more expensive on the steel here, so this one's going to be even more expensive than the Bugout. But other than that, it's pretty much the same knife, and this one is coming in at around the $144 mark. So you're getting up close to 150 bucks for a pocket knife like this. Is that worth it to you? Might be. If you are into collecting knives, I think this is a really cool knife for what it is. Again, haven't carried it. I don't know if I will in the future. But when I just look at this knife for what it is, I believe that the price point should be closer to the $100 mark. But again, that's just my opinion. Now, of course, since this video is about lightweight knives, of course, we have to throw a scale into the mix here and get some actual readouts on these. We'll start with the Spyderco Delica 4, coming in at 2.3 ounces, so sub 3 ounces. That to me is a lightweight knife. Now for the next one, Para 3 lightweight. This one is a little bit bigger, so it's going to weigh probably a tiny bit more, about 2.5. I believe it's advertised as 2.4, but with the dirt and everything on here, maybe that makes it a little bit heavier. Let's actually pull in the Para 3 for a direct comparison to see how lightweight this thing is. 3.4, and again, alright, there we go, 2.4. So you're coming in about an ounce lighter than the Para 3, and again, if you're into lightweight savings, I'm actually a fan of that. But I'm not gonna lie, this one does feel a little bit better because of the G10 FRN. I'm not knocking it, but this one does feel a little bit better. Now moving on to the real lightweight knives. The Bailout first. This one is coming in at just 2 ounces. So we're comparing these side by side now. It seems like this one would be weighing a little bit more, the Bailout, but as you can tell, it's a little bit slimmer. The blade itself is slimmer as well. And if you are really looking to save weight, 2 ounces for a pocket knife, the thing is basically going to get lost in your pocket. And now moving on to the lightest weight of the bunch, we got the Benchmade Bugout, coming in at just 1.8 ounces. So here we have the winner for being ultra lightweight, but again, it may not win in some other departments. It all depends on what you like in a knife, your price point, what materials, blade steels that you like. So yeah, this is all subjective. I'm not saying that any of these knives are better than the others. However, since a lot of people ask for my personal preferences and opinions, out of these blades right here, I think the Para 3 lightweight is going to be the one winning for me in this category. Lightweight pocket knives, this thing is going to go back in my pocket right now. So there you guys have my thoughts on some of the lightweight knives that I have in my collection. Again, it's not for everyone. However, lately I've been sort of taking a liking to lightweight knives like this. Basically gets lost in your pocket, does everything that I need it to do, and so far I'm a fan of this one in particular. If you have any questions on any of the knives that you saw here in this video, I will be leaving links down below where you can check out more in-depth specs and prices and different things like that. And now that I've knocked 4 more knives off of my review list, I still have a couple more in my collection that I haven't gotten around to yet. I am going to try to get around to reviewing everything in this box right here that doesn't already have a review on it before I get around to making a 2020 knife collection video. by the time I even get around to making another knife collection video, there will probably be more in my collection, but I'm gonna have to make room by getting rid of some of these. Or maybe just getting a bigger case, but that kind of defeats the purpose of me getting this case in the first place. So that's all that I had for today. If you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. That's gonna be all. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.